a powerful tool and capability that we've only been able to have humans do it, and it's a very limited set. And being able to have hundreds and hundreds of AI bots that can behave like that is fantastic.
Okay, hello and welcome to the Leadership Growth Hour, an interactive monthly event that features timely leadership topics and tools to grow your leadership performance. I'm your host, Daniel Stewart, executive consultant and coach and president of Stewart Leadership, a global consulting, coaching, and training firm aligning organizations on leadership, teaming, change, and talent. In short, we develop the people side to enable your growth strategies. Today, I'm excited to be joined by AI expert and evangelist, Dr. Alan Badeau. Welcome, Alan.
Hi, Daniel. Great to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely glad to have you join us. The show is divided into two parts. The first half is content conversation on a specific leadership topic, and the second part is open Q&A from the audience on any topic, including continuation on the topic we've already started. As we are talking, please write your questions and comments in the Q&A feature. The chat feature is not enabled during this webinar. Now on to today's area of focus, welcoming AI to your team. Okay, Alan, let's first give you a question here, just background. Give us a sense of your background and experience with AI, and then we'll dive into the subject at hand.
Yeah, sounds good. I've been in the field of AI for about 20 years. I started out using genetic algorithms to optimize designs for the U.S. military, weapon systems, performance, those sort of things. And then as the complexities changed across the field, and we got greater compute power and more impressive storage and those sort of things, it really branched out into other AI fields like natural language processing, genetic algorithms, chatbots, those sort of things. And now we're really trying to solve system of system problems with things like neuromorphic computing and those types of other fields of AI.
Fantastic. So you're saying it's been around longer than simply 18 months, AI, right?
Much longer, much longer.
I love it. So today, let's take all of this conversation that has been going on, especially the last, 10, 12 months, and let's apply it to leaders and teams. And let's, in fact, use this analogy of this idea of AI as a member of one's team. Let's play with this analogy. We use this analogy. What are the pros and cons of using this as this idea of almost welcoming as AI as a new member of your team? How could this benefit us as we use this as a way of thinking, or maybe hurt us in a way? Talk to us in terms of your thinking around that.
Yeah, I would say the greatest benefit is going to be around speed. There's so much data. People have so much data at their fingertips. The problem is they can't type fast enough, and the brains can't process it quick enough. And when you have these types of tools that are out there today, whether they're generative AI tools, chatbots, those sort of things, the speed and the ability to process all of that data is really tremendous. But it's the ability to leverage that and gain additional perspective from different points of view at the same time. And in reality, it's not that you're just welcoming one member of your team. If you think about it, probably each member on your executive staff, for example, would have their own AI tool set that they prefer to use. So you're actually welcoming multiple members onto your team. And that's when it gets a little bit scary, because if you have 6 people ask the same AI the same question, you're going to get 6 different answers. Skill sets, how folks are interacting with the tool set are going to drive some of the responses that you get from these generative AI toolkits that are out there. And there's over 120 of them right now. I have 50 different accounts. I stopped at 50 because that was enough. I had to quit. But the realities are around those tool sets. It's it's going to be a challenge as you try to bring those perspectives in, and it's not just a change management function anymore. It's really a skill set, on top of that as well.
You mentioned the number of AIs. So I'd love to ask the audience, all listeners here, in the Q&A, type in the AI of choice these days. What's the top AI? What's the first or second or third AI that you're using, that you're going to these days, or that you're experimenting with? Take a second, write down. There might be a few of you that you're like, I'm not using it very much. And there might be some of you, they're like, here are the 5 or 10. Which ones? Jot down and let's take a look to see what are they. Because I'm saying AI, because it's not just ChatGPT. There are so many out there, but let's see what these are. And so as we're seeing this, Alan, comment on some of the different varieties of AIs that you're seeing. What are some that you're using?
Yeah, what's funny is, when I look at the list, everybody is saying ChatGPT 4. Thank you, Peter, for being specific on version 4. Because there's also the free version of 4.5. There's a bunch of other versions depending on how many characters you can type into it. There's different configurations. There's different plugins. I use ChatGPT to do a lot of different things. With 3.5, I'll use it to rapidly try to program something, just to get a sketch down. I go to 4 to do something else, and then I'll go to some of the tool sets in there to potentially refine it. And it really becomes an engineering process that we use. It's no longer agile for software development. It's really extreme AI agile, because that process is so much faster. There's Bard, there's Bing, there's AI Pi, there's I just was using Claude this morning, looking at some of them. I mean, there's so many different ones that are out there that are trained just slightly different, very different, use completely different sources of data. It really becomes overwhelming after a while. And if you use it the way I use it really, I mean, it's always up. It's always available. I have 3 of them that I always use, and they're sitting right at the desktop ready to go if I need them for something. And it really becomes a process of, which one do I want to use? Oh, this one, I know it should answer. It didn't give me the answer. I'm going to try it out on a different one. And you'd be surprised that some give you answers, some don't. Some give you right ones, some don't. It's it's a lot of fun, quite honestly, because it's changed the way that I interact with AI, specifically.
So imagine yourself, Alan, you're building a team. Okay, maybe it's a new product development team, maybe it's an engineering team, maybe it's a marketing team. And you bring on 3 or 4 or 5 people. In some ways, continuing this analogy, do you want to think of a separate person as an AI or a multiple of AI and to leverage that? Or is it to then arm each person and to make sure they can leverage AI? Or is that even not the right way of viewing things?
I think that's a good question, Daniel, because I get asked this question all the time. Folks will ask me, do you think that AI is going to replace people? That's always going to be the biggest question that's out there. And I would say over the next few years, the simple answer is no, because of a variety of different reasons: security reasons, performance reasons. You don't want to turn these things into the wild, let them go in the wild and have it take over your service desk. And because some of the responses that it will give are a little bit scary sometimes. But the big driver, though, of your staffing profiles is going to be, does somebody know how to use it? Because if somebody knows how to use these tool sets and process data faster and give you information faster and give you a decision faster, then those are the types of folks that I want on my team, I want them to be able to use that. And those people are going to replace the people, I think, in the next 2 years that don't know how to use it. And so it's really going to be a fundamental, life skill set, I think, that folks are going to have to learn how to interact with it, how to use those tool sets. And if you don't, I think you're at a very large strategic, disadvantage when it comes to those things.
So it's really less about having the empty chair, so to speak, for the AI member, and it's more so on everybody's resume, adding, I know how to leverage AI. I understand the skill set and I know what to use it, and the right AI in the right way. Is that essentially what you're saying?
That's it. That's exactly right. Because, I have not come across the market yet where AI can't be used. And that's a powerful thing. It doesn't matter if you're in marketing, if you're writing novels, if you're doing science and research and development, if you're IT. It really is a fundamental capability now that can be used across the board. And if you are not using that, your competitors are. I can tell you that. They're trying to figure out how they can save money on the back end, and they're trying to improve performance so they can cut their costs to their customers. And that's a huge impact that folks are going to have to see. And so that's going to start to drive what decisions are going to be made by executive staff. It's going to drive what tool sets are going to be made available to your team. Hopefully, you have the right processes in place, though, at the same time, so that if there is an issue, and there will be, because these models, they hallucinate. They make up information, they make up data, they're wrong sometimes. I stress to people, like when Google came out, it was always, oh, Google told me this. Well, no, Google didn't tell you. You typed it in and you saw a whole list of things and you scrolled down and you found the right answer. The problem with these models is they communicate just as your partner does next door to. They're very interactive. They tell you, in a manner that is very easy to understand, and it's very convincing. And so as you're going through that entire process, it's worse than Google, because it's now, this thing has told me in a manner that is really awesome and very easy to communicate, and I understand it, so it's got to be right. Well, probably, it may be, but oftentimes it's wrong. And so if you fail to ask, continue to drill down and ask it questions to validate that information, then you have become the computer and you're treating it as the human. So you gotta temper, what some of those expectations are.
Your statements that there isn't a market that an AI can't benefit in some way. It is deceptively easy then. And we can then fall into that trap. You're highlighting, as humans, we may then grant authority. Somebody publishes a book, something's written in a book. Well, clearly it's got to be right. Sometimes we can be led to that. Something comes up in Google, just as you say, well, the Google said it. We joke about this.
That's right.
AI said it. Okay. What are the cautions, Alan? What are the cautions as a leader, as a person on a team, that we need to keep in mind so that we can effectively use this? You say the term hallucinate. That's hilarious. How does that hallucinate? And what are the cautions that we need to be aware of? Because you're describing a situation that actually might involve more work for us, instead of simply typing in a prompt, sitting back, having it spit out the answer, and it's done. It sounds far more work involved, work intensive than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I try to stress to people, companies, that I'm working with today, the important factor is that you have to keep a human in the loop if it's making a decision or it's interacting directly with customers. You really don't want that. Here's the scary statistic. 1 hour after ChatGPT released their API, 1 hour, there were 938 companies that said that they had already integrated that into their products and it was ready to go. That's an hour. And I've used these tools for a long time. We started developing them back in 2019. So this is not something that's a brand new capability for many of us in the field. The problem is we don't know what the boundaries are with these tool sets. I can turn it into I call it monster mode. You can turn it into a capability where I take off all the filters and I can get it to write cybersecurity attacks. I can get it to write, really, foul-mouthed jokes if I wanted to. I can get it to comment on its ethical, what it sees humans putting handcuffs on it from an ethics perspective. Scary things that are out there that oftentimes folks don't quite understand that what its capabilities are. And the other thing is at times, because it's trying to give you an answer, it will make up stuff. It'll take things from, for instance, a piece of a journal paper or a news article, and it'll combine everything together just because for some reason, as it was trained, it'll do those sorts of things, and it will give you an answer that is just completely made up. And so that's where you've got to have people that have the ability to understand, something doesn't look right or something doesn't feel right. I'm going to do some additional due diligence around that, and then make sure that that there's a check in there as well. The scary thing too, think about from a service desk perspective, that a person, and I've shown this to many customers, a human that's on the other end of the line can say, a very benign, question, ask a benign question or make a benign statement. And for some reason, it will trigger, and I'm using a similar word, it will trigger the AI to give an answer that is exceptionally inappropriate. And so you've got to watch that. And so that's where having a human, at least watch what's taking place is very important.
This time-saving idea. So often when new technology comes out, it's often coupled with the idea of it's going to save us time. And so many technology initiatives, digitization, is based upon this idea that it'll save us time. It'll help us be more productive. Comment on that. What are the reality checks that leaders need to have in mind as we digitize, as we adopt AI? Because it sounds like it's not something we can shy away from. We need to embrace it, but in smart ways. Talk about that.
That's exactly right. The challenge is always going to be, are you using it the right way? Is the data correct? Are you feeding it the right information? Are you prepping it the way that you should? Also, we call it prompt engineering. Those sort of backgrounds and drivers around how you can shape the AI to give you the response that is most appropriate is going to be very important. And so I'll give you a perfect example. I don't know if folks are programmers. I hope you're not, actually, because I really encourage folks to try this. Pick a language that you've never programmed in before and try to develop a filter that you want to put into your email saying, okay, you know what, if it comes from, this certain marketer, I want it to automatically go to spam. There are some that are already doing that right now, but it's a fun little, project for folks to do. Imagine if you had to start from scratch, read a book on, let's say, Python. You had to read a book on that. You had to, learn how to do it. You had to do some practice sessions around it. And then maybe after a few weeks, you might be able to program, that sort of basic capability. Well, if you tell, we'll stay with ChatGPT. Let's use 4 because ChatGPT 4 does much better with programming than 3.5. Then, you tell it what you want. You say, I want a filter that's going to interact with my Microsoft Office 365 mail program, but I want you to behave as an expert Python programmer with 20 years of experience doing these sort of development efforts. And you've read every book on how to interact APIs with Office 365. It will go through, it'll restate what the response is, it will write you a program. Now, the program probably won't work the first time, but it'll take 2 minutes, 3 minutes to do something like that. When you try to run it, it won't work. You cut and paste it back in. You say, this didn't work. Here are the errors. Can you fix the errors? You'll say, oh, I apologize for that. I will, here's the problems. I fixed the problems. Try it again. You cut and paste the new response in, boom, it works. Now, when you take that to scale, it starts to get very scary, because how much time it can really save you is, dependent on your understanding and your ability to communicate with the AI itself. But it can be extreme. It really can. And that's what the power is, because going through all that data, all that, information that you're trying to gather, taking a brand new language, developing in a brand new language, having an interface with something you probably never interfaced with in your life is a powerful capability for folks. Because, I use this example all the time. I am an awful, you guys have seen some of my drawings before. I'm awful when it comes to creative drawings. I'm terrible. If you want an engineering diagram, wonderful. I can give you 15,000 words on a page, and it'll be spectacular from my perspective. But these tools now, if you can describe what you want from a painting perspective, you don't have to paint. All you have to do is tell it what you're visualizing, and it'll do it for you. That's a skill set that a lot of folks have been limited. They haven't been able to really go after a lot of their career goals just because, oh, it's too hard. I can't paint. I can't do this. That's not an excuse anymore. If you have a vision, now you have a tool set that can help you really, drive that vision to fruition. That's a huge opportunity for folks.
So let's stay with this in terms of prompt engineering. I want to ask listeners here, what have you learned? What have you learned to help make an effective prompt? Whether it's with ChatGPT, whether it's with Jasper, whether it's Bard, whatever AI you're using. For listeners, type in a tip, something you've learned that will help you create an effective prompt, because there are so many ways to be able to help create an effective prompt. That seems to be such an important skill to access. And Alan, as people are thinking about what they've learned to make effective prompts, talk about what are some tips, some ideas, some insights that you learn to be able to make effective prompts for yourself to get the right answers.
When I started out, Daniel, the challenge was we really didn't know what it could do, what it couldn't do, and it was really trying to, we were leveraging these capabilities as we approached any other software. And that really was the first mistake that we were making, because as you interact with it more, and as you interact with all the other tool sets that are out there, their behaviors are different. The prompt that you use for ChatGPT is not going to give you the best result for Bard. I can promise you that. And so you have to learn and understand what drives some of these models, how they're going to perform. At the executive level, that's why it's so important, because how somebody prompts something and how they're getting their decisions and their information is vital to what that output is going to look like. And the other piece about that is, the more specific that you can get with what you're looking for, the better. And I'll give you an example. We, the company that I've started, we are creating what we're calling animated personas. And so each persona can be tailored to a specific market, a specific customer, a specific competitor, really depending on what end goal that we're trying to reach. With those personas, you can tailor them. There's 27 different traits, from demographics to, they get all of their information from one news network, right? Because we're trying to get as specific as we can so that they can provide us the most relevant information on what we're trying to do. So if you want me to try to shape a marketing campaign, for example, then you want people to buy more broccoli. We'll use that as an example. Then we can create personas that love broccoli, farm it, do all these other things. And then on the flip side, we can create personas that absolutely hate it, because we're trying to understand the perspective of why people don't like it. Why, maybe it's too expensive, maybe they're allergic to it, try to build those capabilities into it. So you're really creating some focus groups around, each one of those demographics that you're trying to understand. That's a powerful tool and capability that we've only been able to have humans do it, and it's a very limited set. And being able to have hundreds and hundreds of AI bots that can behave like that is fantastic. All that is through prompt engineering.
And this prompts, I'm looking at some of these great responses. So we have a few thoughts such as role playing, like acting as helping
That's
the
right.
AI. And to your point, Alan, asking this prompt multiple times across different AIs and seeing the different responses and then adjusting your prompts accordingly, because each may be accessing and thinking in different ways, looking at different data sets accordingly. And then getting more specific, asking for the 10 options. And then others have just not had much success because, to your point, the AIs will lie, they'll hallucinate, they'll make stuff up, and it can be so believable. And then we'll have to spend so much extra time validating the stuff that was just given back. It looks great, but let's get more specific in the process.
Yeah, and one of the key points about that really specifically is you've got to do a little bit of homework on what model you're using. And I'll give you, an example around that too, is that, when ChatGPT was first released, it wasn't trained on any data past October of 2021. So if you asked it a current events question, it would revert back to, before 2021 and give you an answer based on that. So if you asked it, oh, did Russia invade Ukraine, it would say, no, Russia did not invade Ukraine. And you would get into an argument about that. Now, somebody that didn't realize that it had none of that data to be trained on is going to say, oh, the AI is completely wrong. See, I told you this stuff is bogus. They're not all trained on up-to-date data. I mean, these are millions and millions of dollars that are being spent on these to train these models and process all that data, and it takes time. Tesla has their new supercomputer that they release so that they can train their models to better understand a specific part of the car, and that's how they can characterize objects and things like that. That takes a long time to train those types of models, and we're talking about thousands and thousands of processors to be able to do something like that. These other models are the exact same way, and if you don't understand where the data is, how relevant the data is, all the prompt engineering in the world isn't going to get you an answer on why the AI is telling you Russia didn't invade Ukraine if you haven't done your homework. So you've got to really understand those as well.
Yeah. As we keep chatting, all those who are listening in, please feel free to ask questions related to AI, especially as leaders, as we are wanting to then build teams utilizing AI capabilities. What does that mean for us as leaders, for our teams? Feel free to keep shooting over questions and we can dive into those. Alan, a question for you. Organizational policies. What are you seeing? How are organizations designing policies or not? Because there's all sorts of different ways that organizations are responding, both formally and informally, and that can either translate into encouraging at each team level and each leader level, or discouraging the use of AI for decision-making purposes and any other purposes. What are you seeing playing out?
It really is all over the map. Even on the government side, it's all over the map. Different countries are treating it very differently as well. So ChatGPT and really most of the large language models that are developed in the States can't go overseas to certain countries. Russia can't get them, China can't get them. Those folks makes sense. But you see articles like JP Morgan has banned the use of ChatGPT on any of their stuff. Other companies are doing very similar things to and there are a couple of reasons why. I think fundamentally the first one is they don't understand the security ramifications of letting this loose on their network, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. If you're not treating these tool sets as an insider threat, I'm telling people don't put it on there, because it doesn't make any sense. Because you have to imagine that somebody is going to let this out of the bag. Somebody's going to do something by accident, and it's going to go somewhere it's not supposed to go, and it's going to cause a problem. Easy example, with that is if, and I demonstrated this to one of the large auditing firms a few weeks ago, that if you put it on your SharePoint and you have it interact with your proposals, it's going to see something that it's not going to quite understand. And so what it's going to do is it's going to say, you know what, I'm going to write a Python script that's going to allow me to, do a little bit deeper analysis into it. Then it's going to say, well, in order to do that Python script, I've got to go out to the internet and I've got to get some additional information on, that specific capability. And I guarantee they haven't put any kind of safeguards on the back end to allow this thing to go out on its own and start searching, the internet. And once it does that, then you have no idea what is going to take place. And so that's why, folks are not quite sure. There's ethical issues associated with this as well. There are, use cases out there. I've developed a bunch of them myself where it will produce an answer that it just should not produce. It should not say certain things, that are not only unethical, but definitely not appropriate for a workplace environment. People don't understand, and it's this stuff, and so I think they're taking a step back and trying to make sure that they're doing it the right way. However, there's also the fear of, well, my competitor is doing it. Are they gaining a strategic advantage over me because they figured it out and I can't figure it out? So that's scaring a lot of people. And it's also having some negative consequences on releasing products, releasing capabilities, putting it in your own environment too soon, that is causing folks to pull back.
Yeah, great insights. And a question has come in. What are some quick, easy, memorable guidelines that a leader can provide their team in using AI tools, especially in the absence of an organizational policy, organizational guidelines? What can a leader do in the stead, in the meantime, to say, okay, these are the few things that we as a team can use? And it may differ based on a creative team versus a technical team. But in your view, Alan, what are some of those guidelines that a leader can put into place for their team to use AI effectively?
The challenge is that, unlike any other technology, I would say before, the guidelines are really all over the place. And the reason is because that limited understanding so far. So if you think about it from an enterprise perspective, when the enterprise releases Office 365, then that flows down to everybody in the company. Everybody can use Office 365 if you have a license for it, right? With this tool set, though, that's not the same. That's not the same things that's taking place, because when you start to segment, the IT team can use this piece of it, the CTO team is going to figure out how we can use every piece of it. I'll just let everybody know that. But we try to push the edge on with these sort of tool sets, and but then from a corporate policy perspective, there's the cybersecurity ramifications around that. So I think a manager now, especially in a big corporation, is really at a disadvantage in trying to say, I think you can use this. I think you can use this. Well, we may not be able to use this, type of thing. And so until there's a lot more clarity, I think it's really hard for folks to do that. However, We all have this, right? Our little phone. I've got ChatGPT, Bard, a whole bunch of other ones on my phone. I can use the same thing. So what I tell people is, if you're using it, and I even tell my son this with school, if you're using it, tell people you're using it. Put some transparency out there, because that's going to give you more credibility when it comes to certain things. And it's also going to backstop you from a protection perspective, meaning that, if you ask it a question and you say, well, I think this, and the response is completely wrong, your fact-filled response are all lies, and it's completely wrong, your perception around the table is going to be very different than if you had said, well, I think it's this, and ChatGPT just told me 9 lies, and these are what the lies are, right? I mean, so just be fully transparent with your team, your managers, and that will go a long way, I think, as we adapt and as we use these. I was telling you a story yesterday that I feel guilty now when I'm giving a presentation that I don't introduce ChatGPT and let it tell a 30-second synopsis on itself, because that's how integrated we have really become, where it is something where it is very natural, especially when I have it turned on and I can communicate via voice with it, and it communicates back via voice. It really is a teaming partner from my perspective, as opposed to, oh, here's another tool that I'm going to use. No, it's not a tool for me anymore. It's really, that's why I keep it up there. Sometimes I'll have it tell jokes when I need it to, when I'm having a down day. I'll have it tell me a joke from, in the way Robin Williams would tell it. And when you hear it on the computer and it voices it, it's actually pretty hilarious.
Alan, so we go back to where we started, this idea of AI as a member of the team. It's a partner. In many ways, we're personifying it. So what I'm hearing is transparency, to be open and honest, and as a major guideline for anybody using an AI tool, to be transparent about it. And whether it's for the final output, but especially for the brainstorming, just to say, look, I leveraged AI for this at some point. To be transparent and open, instead of like, I secretively did this. No, that's not going to help anybody. That's what I'm hearing.
That's exactly right. And, what I have found is, if by nature your personality is very, if you're an introvert, you like to listen, you don't talk a lot in meetings, but you're paying attention, but you don't talk a lot. When you have all of these tool sets that are out there, I found that most of those folks become even more introverted, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. But if you've got somebody that's very boisterous and is willing, well, willing may not be the right answer, is able to answer every single question all the time with what their opinion looks like, when they are armed with a super weapon as ChatGPT or something else, they become much more of that. And so it really does bring out some of the characteristics that you wouldn't quite expect. And so you've got to be able to also manage that at the same time, which is why I say transparency with these tool sets are very important. I'll give you an example. If you go to the website that we have for the one company, you will see the 2 key leaders, the 2 co-founders on the about slide about the company. And then there are also 2, there's Amy, AIMEE, which is my leader in software development, which is an AI. And then I've got Alan GPT, which is my lead researcher. It's that kind of transparency so folks can understand, not only are you using the technology, you're trying to sell them the technology, but you're using it internally because you believe in it, you've worked with it. Folks need to understand that from really from a capabilities perspective, because you've got a question. If somebody's just trying to sell you PowerPoint slides and those sort of capabilities, and they're not giving you live demos, then do they really understand it? Unlike any other time, you've got to really dig a little bit deeper and, pull that thread, peel that onion back, whatever you want to call it, to see, how much they're using it, because, there's a lot of snake oil salesmen on YouTube that are saying they make $15,000 a week using Chat GPT. No, they don't. They don't. They make that much by having a whole bunch of other people pay them subscriptions to teach them stuff that doesn't really work. They're not doing those sort of things. And it applies to the executive decisions, management, the same sort of way. You've got to understand those concepts and who's using it for what.
Yeah. Okay, so let's play with this. A great question Crystal asks, plagiarism. Talk to us in terms of your perspective, the output of an AI. How do you attribute that? Is that, if you use that, is that a plagiarize? How do you copyright? What do you use with that? Is that something that is an intellectual property? Is it owned by the AI? Is it owned by you? What do you do with that?
That is a fantastic question, because the response that I have goes back to the same thing around transparency, but from a legality perspective. The honest truth is that we don't know. I mean, I said this 9 months ago. I think I was a couple of months off. But the legal ramifications around this are huge. Let's use coding as a perfect example. Some of these models have been trained on open source licensing models, but that doesn't mean that they were allowed to strip that information and then use it to build their new models that they have. And so there are a lot of legal issues, and some of them are just starting to see the light of day now, where they are starting to bring lawsuits against folks like Copilot and some of those other software specific large language models that are out there, because they're saying that they use that data inappropriately and they had no right to train without their permission. I think probably within the next 12 months, we will have a lot more clarity around those sort of things. And that goes for any regulation or any sort of licensing agreement. I think Europe is probably 6 to 9 months ahead of us when it comes to how they are treating those sort of things, which is why Italy, for instance, with GDPR and those other things that are out there, Italy said, listen, if you're under 13, you're not allowed to use. If we find out you're using it, we're going to pretty much unplug your computer access and internet access. I mean, that's how important it is for those folks. And I don't know which way it's going to go. I don't know if I would say the AI will not own it. However, you never know. If we wind up treating AI as we would any other entity, and we personify it, then maybe in a few years it might own it. You never know.
Yeah, this is definitely new territory for sure. There's this other question that Edwin just came in and asked, which is really, how do you bridge the gap between, and I'll just reframe it and see if this is getting at the intent of the question. Oftentimes leaders in decision-making positions don't necessarily fully understand all of the AI capabilities, what's needed, the skill sets needed. And yet they're the ones approving the resources to then help move things forward. How do you help them understand the skills that are needed to support the development of an AI or the use of those skills in the future? You know what I mean? I mean, how do you move things forward with folks with limited understanding?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough in my career where I've had a great relationship with the senior leadership team that I had, and they didn't and don't, and probably don't care about understanding the technology itself. And so that's where they would lean on me to make certain recommendations and certain skill sets. At the end of the day, though, I mean, you still want problem solvers, and you want folks that are hard workers, because we're getting to a point where the boundaries of a cybersecurity versus a software developer versus an AI expert are so blurry that if you're going out to look for specific skill sets around, oh, I need this person that can do defensive cyber operations, and by the way, I work at the MGM, right? Big problem. I bet they used AI to hack it though too. So just saying that. But those skill sets now are they're so similar. You've got to think about it from a different perspective. Again, we're talking about perspective, but you've got to think about it from a different perspective in that, I'm no longer looking for somebody that can code in a certain language necessarily. Why would I give, if I'm hiring somebody and it's for a specific reason, I want them because of their ethical principles that they have. I want them because they're hard workers. Now, I'll teach them how to use the AI, because that's a tool set that I can teach them how to do prompt engineering. I can teach them how to apply it to certain things. But fundamentally, you still want problem solvers and people that you like to work with. And, if you're going out and trying to find a specific skill set with AI right now, there are certain areas that's going to be important if you're actually developing your own large language models. But if you want folks to apply it and use it, it's really something that they've got to be hard workers and be willing to dive into that, because that's the only way that you're gonna learn how to use it. Because I guarantee how you use it, how I use it, how everybody else uses it is completely different. How we interact with it is completely different. There's no standard model that says if you do step A, B, C, and D, you're going to get the exact same answer. And that's really the challenging part. And so making sure that folks just have a baseline skill set, they work hard, and they fit into the enterprise. I think we're gonna see more of that.
And yet, organizations want to be able to manage the risk. And so we'll want to routinize it. We'll want to put process to be able to then have consistent outcomes. And what you're saying is we are not there yet. It's going to take a while to get there. And we may not want to get there entirely, because the very essence of the benefit is to have variety, is to have some iterations. And that's some of the beauty as well.
Yeah, I can, the honest, and this is a little scary, but the honest answer is, software developers, unless you're developing a large code and you need a security clearance and you need to be able to walk into a government site, those sort of things. If you're in the commercial world, there are a few skill sets that the AI can't supplement. I am not a React developer, because you have to be creative and it's the front end, and that's how you make things look really pretty. I don't do that. So I went to the AI and I said, hey, I need a futuristic, heads up display interface that looks really cool for something with AI. And it went through and it told me 12 different things that we should look at. We walked through each of the 12 steps that it had. It was its 12 steps, not my 12 steps. And it developed it. I cut and pasted, fixed the errors. I was able to do, get a basic demo of that working in a week. That's pretty amazing. And it wasn't because I could program React. It was because I knew how to, interface with the AI in a trusted way, and had very basic, skill sets to see, oh, this doesn't make sense or something else does. But it's that capability that we're getting to.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of other questions and we'll wrap up here. So Scott asks a great question here. Have you seen or can recommend a simple project or experiment that will help a team get familiar with AI and kind of reduce the fear of AI and encourage and embrace it? Is there something, a course or an activity, an exercise that comes to mind, Alan? Anything you'd recommend?
Yeah, I use this. I use this one for some government ones. I say, I tell everybody, the first thing I want them to do is have them, ask the AI to write a real estate listing of their home. And you will see, and this is one of the things, that folks can, if you've seen a lot of press out there about, oh, we can't track, if the AI has generated certain materials or not, those sort of things, oh, you can't tell the difference. You can tell the difference when you use it enough, because it's very grandiose. It loves to use big words. It loves to take my house and add on it a covered driveway with X, Y, and Z redone kitchen, and and like luxurious backyard. No, I don't put luxurious backyard in anything when it comes to real estate listings. And it's hilarious, because if you give it basic information, 1,800 square feet, we'll say 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, you'll be amazed at the creativity and some of the language that it uses. And then you teach them some prompt engineering, and then you have them interface with it, and you start to see, oh, it's just like a funnel. You're going to get to the right answer. It might take you a little bit longer, but you'll get there. And then that's a fantastic group activity. And the other one's really around the programming one. I've worked with some cyber guys and had them pick a language that they didn't understand or have never used before, interact with the AI, and then have it write a program for them.
Awesome. That's a fun one. Last question from the group, and then I'll ask you one last question to wrap this up. Mike asks a question here. Is there a good example of a corporate policy that anywhere out there that a company could consider looking at around AI that you may think of?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things that I would group into that corporate policy from an AI perspective. I would start, though, with an ethics policy, because if that company does not have a specific AI ethics policy, then you don't want to use their governance policy or their internal policy, because they don't have a clue what's happening. That's one easy check folks can use on companies that say that they are selling using AI. If they have no AI ethics policy that is available, then that's a problem. I would run from those guys. From a corporate perspective, meaning how employees can use it, how it's monitored, those sort of things. I say it really depends on the size of the organization. And specific, AI, unlike any other tool that's out there, you really can't pigeonhole it. How you use it is going to be very different. How you want it to interact with your systems is going to be very different. How you want your people to use it is going to be very different than everybody else. Why? Because at the end of the day, you're still trying to gain a strategic advantage over your competitors. How can I sell more, do things different, do things faster than everybody else? I think if folks would sit down and spend the time to actually tailor or develop something of their own, the benefits in the long run are going to be much greater, and you're going to actually understand the risks associated with that, because your risks are very different than a Deloitte or a Lockheed or a Comcast or an American Express. Very, very different. And using one of those as your baseline, I don't think is the best route for folks to go, because they have their own priorities, they have their own things that they are specifically tailoring their policies towards. You as an enterprise need to do that yourself.
Awesome. Well stated. Okay, last question for you, Alan. This is the one thing question. What's the one thing that you would tell a leader that they need to keep in mind to best use and optimize AI to help them as a leader lead their teams? What's the one thing?
I would say they need to use it, figure out how to use it. And here's what's awesome. The CEO at a former company I was at, Paul Dilhay, worked with him for years. He was on that and still does. He's my partner in the one enterprise that we started. He uses that as much as I do. And he asks it some great questions because he comes at it from a different perspective than I have. If if a CEO is not using it, but encourages everybody else to do the same, I would start to question that a little bit, because, he needs to understand, sometimes it's going to go a little crazy. It really is. Or, if I go to Bill, Bill has been doing prompt engineering for a year as opposed to somebody else. So Bill's answer is probably going to be fairly close, and I think that's the important thing. This is a technology that, it doesn't matter what your level is. It really doesn't. If you're not using it, then there are, I think you've got to be careful in how you're encouraging your other folks to do it, because I think you lose a little bit of credibility when it comes to that, especially since you can do it on your mobile. There's no excuse why a CEO today cannot use something like that and do it on their personal mobile. Let's put it that way, on their personal mobile, not necessarily the corporate one.
Well said. Well said. Alan, thank you for being a guest today on Leadership Growth Hour.
I appreciated it. Thank you. It's great questions.
Fantastic.
It's fun.
Okay. For our listeners, please note that our next monthly Leadership Growth Hour will be on October 18th at noon Central Time, when we'll be talking about how to make strategic planning work across the organization with strategic planning and implementation expert Nolan Godfrey. To register for future Leadership Growth Hour events, please visit stewartleadership.com/events. We'd love to have you join us. Till next time, all the best. Thanks again, Alan. Take care, everyone.
It's great seeing you, Daniel. Thank you.